What is going on, guys? I am BlackOpsAmazing. Welcome yourselves back to another Zombies Q&A on the channel, where I'm sure you guys know by now we take your questions from the comment section below to do with the zombie storyline and Easter eggs, and we answer them. So as always, if you enjoyed today's video, you guys know what to do. Smash that like button on the video. Could we shoot for 1k likes? Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel. And of course, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Here we go. So the first question from the gaming robot says, what map do you think is better, Shadows of Evil or Revelations? And for me, hands down, there's really no competition. It is just got to be Shadows of Evil. Shadows of Evil, when it first came out, obviously first map we got on Black Ops 3, I really didn't like it. I thought it was quite a poor start to BO3. But then as time went on and more maps came out, and especially now, it is arguably one of my favourite maps in BO3. My favourite of all time is probably the Eisendrache. That map is just a freaking masterpiece. But Shadows of Evil, in my opinion, along with Karovi, for me, stand about the same. I honestly think that map is freaking great. The innovation on it, the changes they made on it. It is really a different map from anything else we really got. And also we've got a different set of characters as well, which are really cool. Shadows for me is a hell of a lot better than Revelations. Revelations for me is quite boring. One of the reasons for that is because it's made up of a load of maps that we've played before, so it just feels very samey. I don't really get any enjoyment out of playing it, whereas with Shadows, I do. I don't know, there's just something about Revelations that I'm not really keen on. I'm not saying it's a bad map, it's not terrible, but it's just not really enjoyable for me. And I also think it's because it was the last map in the DLC, I expected a lot more. I see what they were trying to do, bring back the nostalgia, but the fact that we had Zombies Chronicles return as well, which was basically all of these maps returned, besides from a few of them, that took a bit of that nostalgia away. And yeah, Revelations for me is just a bit of a letdown. It's a boring map in my opinion, whereas Shadows was very innovative. It's got a lot of things going for it, a lot of things you can do. It's just a cool map overall, and in my opinion is a lot better. If I could rate BO3's maps, I'd probably say the Eisendrache is the best, then Shadows, then Karovi, and then it's difficult between Revelations and Zetsubo, but I'd probably go Rev and then Zet. The next question from Ish Phoenix God says, hey BOA, I have two questions. The first one is, who created the Skull of Nansapwa, and what is the story about it? And the second question is, who created the Blundergat? Well, no one created these weapons as such. The Skull of Nansapwa was, as it says, the skull of Nansapwa, who was a keeper. And you actually get told this story in Zetsubo no Shima. On the walls, you can actually light them up using this weapon, and it will tell you Nansapwa's story. In fact, I actually have a full video of it on my channel if you want to check it out. Just go and search it up. But Nansapwa was a keeper that existed years and years ago, and he was here protecting the island of Pompeii. When one day a great evil was unleashed, which was the Apothicans, they were unleashed on the island, and so Nansapwa used his head, since it had many powers, he used his skull to fight the Apothicans off. Nansapwa sacrificed himself to save the people on the island. He basically killed himself to let the people living here survive. So in the end, the Apothicans were defeated, but unfortunately Nansapwa was dead. He sacrificed himself, and so you can see his head on an altar on the island. This weapon wasn't built by anyone. This is the skull of Nansapwa, and as we can see, we can use it in game and use all of the powers that he had. So that is the first one. And your second question is, who built the Blundergat? Again, it is a weapon that was used by the Warden in the 1930s. It seems like a hybrid of a weapon between the blunderbuss, and it's got a bit of a Gatling gun on there as well. So the Blundergat was possibly made by the Warden. He modified this thing, but then we can see in game we can put acid in it and upgrade it to the Acid Gat. But to answer your two questions, the Blundergat was a modified weapon made by the Warden, and the Skull of Nansapwa was the skull of a keeper that existed hundreds of years ago. Craze Fusion says, why on the Giant can you see Dr. Maxis's office? It is in the lower barricades at the spawn point. Well, the Giant was the main headquarters of Group 935. We know that Maxis was the leader of Group 935, so he's bound to have an office here. In fact, he did. He had quite a few. You can see one of them in the spawn area. You can see more of them at different points in the map. This was just one of the many offices that Maxis had. Of course, he's gonna, because like I said, this is the main headquarters of his Group 935. You can also see other offices that he had in the Eisendrache, and I believe there's some in Kino as well, other places like that. So that's a pretty easy one to answer. The next question from Alparai says, BOA, in BO2 Buried, why do Richtofen and Maxis have different events as soon as you do the Easter egg? So I'm not exactly sure what you're trying to say, it's a bit confusing, but I believe you're basically asking me why are there two different Easter eggs for Maxis and Richtofen in Buried. Well, of course we all know by now that only one of those Easter eggs counted, only one of them actually happened. The other one didn't, it was just there to do for fun. It was just another thing we could do on the side to see a possible other outcome, but that actually never really happened. It's really difficult to explain, but we know that the Maxis side of the Easter egg is canon, where we do all of these things for Maxis, and in the end, he is finally able to reach Argotha, where he can reunite with his daughter Samantha, and he tells our transit characters that they are essentially doomed. He tells us that he is going to kill them, and that unfortunately neither the Earth that they are on or any of the people on it will survive. So Maxis basically dooms our transit characters. Because he'd been trapped in the ether for so long, Maxis had become corrupted, he'd turned evil, kind of like Richtofen did when he touched the MPD for the first time, and so Maxis, because he wasn't his usual self, doomed the transit characters and told them that they wouldn't survive. As we know, they did, because an alternate version of Richtofen opened up a portal for them, allowing them to escape, which then led on to the comics. But that was the Maxis side of the Easter egg that actually happened. However, as you say, you can do an alternate Easter egg, and that is the Richtofen side. This doesn't actually happen in game. To do with our story, this never actually takes place. It's just kind of like a side Easter egg you can do, another one you can do, but it's got nothing to do with our story. It's kind of like just an alternate version to show you what would happen if the Richtofen side actually happened, but it didn't. However, we know that the ending for this means that Richtofen gains full control, he dooms Maxis, essentially killing him, and also he goes inside of Samuel's body, taking over him. So now Richtofen has not only a form of himself in Argotha, but also he's now able to do physical things on Earth. But like I said, none of that matters because it doesn't really take place. But that's why there's two different endings. One actually happened, the other one didn't. It's just to show you what could have happened if the Richtofen side was canon. The next question said, where did the dragon heads come from in Der Eisendrache? Now, this is a very popular question that I get asked all of the time. I've seen loads of people ask me this, but I haven't answered it really up until this point because I haven't had an answer. I simply don't know where the dragon heads come from. We haven't been told it in the Canorium. From what I know, I've listened to the quotes 1,000 times. Nobody tells us where the dragon heads come from, who made them, why they are there, and so I haven't brought this question up. But I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I think I could have a good theory as to where these dragon heads came from and as to why they are here. So we know before this we had Mob of the Dead, in which we had a very similar case with the dog heads. We had dog heads on the wall, which was supposed to represent Cerberus, and after feeding all of these, we could finally get our hands on the Hell's Retriever. But we know that this map takes place in a twisted version of Alcatraz. It's not in reality. A lot of things in here, most things besides from the people that we play as, aren't real. The Cerberus heads aren't real, the Hell's Retriever isn't real, the perks aren't really real, they fade in and out. This whole map takes place in purgatory, not in reality. Whereas Der Eisendrache is different. It is in reality, everything in here is real, whereas before with Mob of the Dead you could have said the reason we see the dog heads on the wall is because it is in purgatory, it's not reality. Well, you can't say the same for Der Eisendrache because this is in reality. These dragon heads are real, so why are they on the wall and where do they come from? Well, as I said, we haven't had an explanation for these. We are not told about them in the Canorium or by the characters in game. But I was thinking, now we know that Der Eisendrache Castle was built in the 14th century, just after Primus defeated the Apothicans, bringing the Great War to an end. Before they seemingly disappeared, Primus instructed the Wolf King, who had also been taking place in the Great Battle, to begin building Der Eisendrache Castle, and that was on January the 1st of 1300. We can guess that it took a few years to finish. We don't know exactly, but this castle was built sometime in 1300 by the Wolf King, and he was told to build it by Primus. And I think it's possible that these dragon heads were put there during that time. These aren't something new that arrived at the castle when Group 935 were around. Maybe these dragon head statues were put here in 1300 when the castle was being built. Possibly they were put here by Primus to protect the castle. We know Primus used magic elemental staffs to defeat the Apothicons, so maybe somehow they used their magic on the walls of the castle to create these dragon statues, and if a war or something was to ever invade the castle, these statues would come to life as dragons and protect it. And that's exactly what happens when we play. The zombie outbreak happens, they invade the castle, and so these dragon head statues come to life and protect it. So I'm thinking that these were possibly put here by Primus, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. They were given to the Wolf King to protect his castle, and like I said, that's exactly what they do. I think that could be a reasonable explanation. I can't really think of another one. Like I said, I don't exactly know how Group 935 would magic these things up. I mean, we know hundreds of years later they did take over the castle and use it as their base. I don't think they actually put these dragons here though, because I can't think of an explanation as to not why, but even how they would make these things. Surely if they could make them at Dear Eisen, they'd put more of them at their other bases to protect them as well. So I don't think they were made by Group 935. Like I said, I think these dragon heads have been here since the 14th century, since the 1300s, since the castle was built to protect it. They seem to have something to do with magic, so possibly put here by Primus just before they left. I don't know. That's just the theory, but let me know what you guys think about that one in the comment section below. Anyway guys, there we go. That is it for today's video. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you guys know what to do. Drop a like rating. It's always very much appreciated. Could we shoot for 1k likes on this video? If we can, then that'd be awesome. Make sure you guys are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest zombies content, and also click the bell notification icon as well. Leave any comments you have in the comment section below, any questions, anything you want to know to do with the zombie storyline or Easter eggs, and of course we'll see you all in the next video. Thank you. Until next time, goodbye.